Sus estudiantes están en Broadway, en Moulin Rouge, en Hamilton, en Lion King, en Chicago, en Gypsy, en Nine, en Wicked, en Spamalot. Estoy saltando la lista. Y ella comenzó a hacer música popular con la técnica de la música clásica. De eso queremos hablar, porque hay mucha controversia en términos de si hay que hacer cambios sustanciales para hacer música de teatro musical o música popular cuando uno tiene un entrenamiento clásico.
And that is the basis. We ride on the breath, we sing on vowels, but there are tweaks that we must make in order to celebrate the contemporary music. That's what happened to my vocal cords.
Whoa.
Yup. There's a hemorrhage, there's a node, and there's a cyst.
Can you move it this way a little bit more? Oh my goodness.
Yes, I really did damage to myself. Now going to show business, only if you die if you didn't. Study. You asked me the first thing, what does somebody have to do? And we've become very benign about the craft. I believe we should be picky in a celebratory way.
Vocálica, un espacio para descubrir tu voz con libertad.
Bienvenidos a Vocálica, el espacio para descubrir tu voz con libertad. Y hoy estamos de lujo porque tenemos una invitada especial. Eileen, ¿cómo tú estás?
¿Cómo estás, doctora Voz? Qué bueno.
Pues muy bien, aquí emocionada porque vamos a hablar con una diva del teatro musical.
Estoy bien contenta y bien ilusionada con todo lo que vamos a aprender el día de hoy. Resulta que está con nosotros la maravillosa Celeste Simone y yo voy a hablar con ustedes, ¿verdad? Un poquito de quién es ella. Este podcast va a ser un poquito singular, este episodio, porque vamos a tener, ella habla inglés, pero vamos a estar traduciendo las cosas y en la interacción, ¿verdad? Vamos a estar hablando español e inglés, pero quédense pegaditos por ahí porque tenemos muchísimo que aprender de Celeste. Para los que no la conocen, ella es la maestra y la coach de Kristin Chenoweth. Kristin Chenoweth es una de las estrellas más importantes en el mundo del teatro musical, además de Chita Rivera, que es puertorriqueña y es un icono, ¿verdad? De la cultura del teatro musical también. Así que ha trabajado con muchos artistas de renombre, Adam Chandler-Beret, Didi Conn, Kellerman, Loni Ackermann, mucha gente que está en el mundo del teatro musical. Amy Irving, la actriz, el compositor David Shire, de American Idol, Kimberly Locke. Así que muchas personas, ¿verdad?, que ustedes tienen que haber escuchado en estos espacios tan importantes y tan prestigiosos. Sus estudiantes están en Broadway, en Moulin Rouge, en Hamilton, en Lion King, en Chicago, en Gypsy, en Nine, en Wicked, en Spamalot. Estoy saltando la lista, en Tarzan, The Color Purple, The Book of Mormon. Estos todos son musicales que están vigentes ahora mismo en Broadway y son de los más famosos. Así que ha trabajado en la versión de concierto de West Side Story, de South Pacific, de Beauty and the Beast. Así que ella ha dirigido más de 400 versiones o shows de cabaret y fue nominada para el Best Director Award del Manhattan Association of Cabaret muchísimas veces. Así que ha sido vocal coach en producciones de Singing in the Rain, The Ragtime Pippin, Amazing Technicolor, Dream Code. Dirigió nacionalmente, se vio su dirección en NBC Christmas. Así que por ahí para abajo el bio de Celeste es impresionante. Así que estamos de lujo el día de hoy.
Mega lujo.
Así que por ahí estoy saltando, pero ha trabajado con American Idol y muchos espacios de televisión. Ha cantado en comerciales, ha cantado profesionalmente teatro musical y de todo. Así que Se desempeña como profesora actualmente en la ciudad de Manhattan, en New York, y es miembro de la facultad de Coop Theater Studio en Turtle Bay Music School, y tiene una posición en el Board of Directors del Bel Canto Institute en Florencia, Italia. Trabaja también, ¿verdad?, en el campamento, en el bootcamp que hace Kristin Chenoweth también en el verano, así que pues queremos recibir con mucha alegría, ¿verdad? A este lujo de invitada que tenemos el día de hoy. Ella es Celeste Simone. Qué bueno que estás con nosotros. Hi, Celeste. How are you?
Hello, I'm well, Eileen. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a great opportunity for me to be able to express all my passion and love for this art form.
It's a pleasure for us to have
We are
you
so
here.
excited. We really are.
Yes. So, vamos directo a la materia. Hoy vamos a estar haciendo traducciones simultáneas, así que vamos a estar interrumpiendo por el medio por ahí para hablar con nuestros amigos que probablemente necesitan un poco de ayuda de traducción, así que vamos a estar defendiéndonos por ahí en ambos idiomas. Así que vamos a comenzar. Let's begin.
Vamos a comenzar con la primera pregunta. Le vamos a preguntar a Celeste cuáles son los requisitos necesarios para comenzar una carrera en teatro musical. So this is the first question for you. What are the requirements needed to start a musical theater career?
Well, the first thing is a passion that is unwavering. This is all legs of show business are hard. I always tell my students when they're getting ready to apply for college programs, I say two things. How many television stations are there and how many Broadway shows are there? See, I believe that the training is so important even before the college age. Dancing has to be unbelievable. The requirements for dance in the American musical theater programs, colleges, and I will say I am not an advocate of musical theater programs. I tell my students' parents all the time, because of the nature of this business and how hard it is, my suggestion is always that they take general ed classes in the community college and get their bodies into New York. I mean, if you're in this area, and see what it's really like. Because a lot of these young people today are very privileged in that they have youth theater. They have great art programs in their high schools. And they're, mommy writes a check. And yes, they're talented, but they're doing shows nonstop. And I always say, you perform this much when you're in high school, this much when you're in college, and then the real world, you'll be lucky to perform. That's the reality of that business.
Sí, para los amigos que nos están escuchando, la recomendación inicial de Celeste es que desde el principio, desde temprano, tú puedas tener educación, especialmente en baile y todas estas cosas que, ¿verdad?, que te hacen falta para teatro musical, que bien, y estar luego de eso en New York. Ir para allá y ver cómo te sientes en ese field, ¿verdad? Good, Celeste. You were saying.
If there was some, and let me readjust my thinking here, because we're talking about people in Puerto Rico that have a desire to explore this leg of the business.
The and first all thing over Latin America, people from everywhere in Latin America.
So there's no musical theater there. Is what?
Not a lot. Not a lot,
but there's a lot of places that are starting to translate some of the shows.
Yes.
And there are companies in Latin America that they do musical theater, and it's all inspired by the traditional American musical theater. So that's why having you as a resource is so valuable for us.
Yes. There's so much involved in it. Let's take a young person that wants to pursue this.
Great.
Dance skills, acting skills, and singing skills. Now,
Okay.
you know, Abby, I mean, we start off with the bel canto. I'm just going to tell you a little about why I feel like I could pontificate the way I do about this subject. I studied at Manhattan School of Music. I went to the preparatory division there and to the college division. I studied with some of the two of the most illustrious voice teachers in New York at the time, Daniel Farrow and Ellen Fall. So this was all classical. I was being geared towards that. One of my greatest mentors was Cynthia Auerbach, who was a director at City Opera. Well, I graduated from Manhattan School of Music, and I realized that when I got on stage, I was funny. So opera wasn't my first passion. We didn't have musical theater I'm old, you know, I'm 68 years old. So when I was going to college,
You look
Wait.
great.
You look amazing.
it's a lot of facelift tape, honey, let me tell you.
Yes.
But so what happened was we didn't have musical theater programs. And because I went to the preparatory division at Manhattan School and we did operas, that was what I was ensconced in and what I knew.
Okay.
Then I left. When I graduated, I immediately got work in the theater and in nightclubs. So they didn't want to hear Puccini, Pergolesi, Verdi. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear Candor and Ebb, and they wanted to hear show tunes and brassy. And what happened, and I'll show you this, is that's what happened to my vocal cords.
Whoa.
Yup. There's a hemorrhage, there's a node, and there's a cyst.
Can you move it this way a little bit more? Oh my goodness.
Yes, I really did damage to myself. Now, nowadays, a lot of singers have surgery. Well, in my day, you know, that wasn't a choice. You shut your mouth and you learned a different way.
Wow, this is so important. Can we translate this? Because it's so...
Celeste nos trae un asunto bien interesante acerca de su educación musical, que a nosotros nos parece maravilloso porque mucho de nuestro público está interesado o hace música popular, pero va a espacios de entrenamiento, de adiestramiento vocal de música clásica. Así que ella está diciendo que ella fue educada, ¿verdad? En Manhattan School of Music con los mejores profesores, pero cuando salió y comenzó a hacer música, ¿verdad? Operática, se sentía rara, y comenzó a hacer música popular con la técnica de la música clásica. De eso queremos hablar, porque hay mucha controversia en términos de si hay que hacer cambios sustanciales para hacer música de teatro musical o música popular cuando uno tiene un entrenamiento clásico. Así que también nos dijo, y de inicio nos estaba diciendo que si un joven quiere hacer teatro musical, necesita habilidad para el baile o, ¿verdad?, desarrollar su habilidad en el baile y desarrollarse en el campo de la actuación y también, ¿verdad?, en el campo del canto y adiestrarse. Y atado a eso, pues nos estaba contando su historia de cuando hizo la transición a la música popular, que se hizo un daño que ya ustedes vieron en sus cuerdas vocales y lo tiene ahí documentado. So, tell us, Celeste.
I'm nodding my head like I understand what you're saying, and I'm kind of understanding.
Yay! That's great. That's great.
Little words here and there.
That leads us to our next question.
Okay.
Tell us about the technical differences between teaching and learning musical theater and classical music. What are your technical thoughts about that?
Well, first of all, I am incredibly grateful for my study at Manhattan School. I am so grateful that I learned about the bel canto technique. When I was in the just an aside, you know, when you say about teaching, I had a teacher, Ilse Sass, who was a German Jew and a Holocaust survivor, and she was my first teacher. I don't think she taught me much about singing, but she did teach me about what it means to be a loving, supportive teacher, and that was very important.
Yes.
Okay. Uh, One of the teachers that I studied with at Manhattan School was not the most patient or kind, and he taught me everything not to be as a teacher. So all through the process and the journey was all about leading to this point. Okay, so you don't approach Pergolesi or Caccini or Verdi the same way you approach Jason Robert Brown, Pascac and Paul, Kander and Ebb. It's style. So not only do you have to teach the student about different styles, which then I say one voice, many colors, one voice, many choices. And if the technique is right, I do believe now I have one student who is studying classically in Nebraska. She's doing a double major. I believe you have to make a choice because the integrity and the beauty of the classical singer, there's nobody like a Leontine Price and like a Luciano Pavarotti. I get that. But I do believe even the musical theater singer must have access to their upper register and understand how to use that in a healthy way. So what are the differences? There are lots of differences, and to be able to articulate generally is a little difficult, but I'll say the breathing that I use is just what I say, it's God and science. It's how our body works. That's how I deal with breathing. I think the student should know parts of their body. So the first thing I will ask a student who comes to me is, where's your hard palate, soft palate, temporomandibular, your thyroid cartilage, where's your trachea, your lungs? Yes, and I believe that's so important because your body is your instrument. And if you don't know your body, how are you going to know if a teacher said, how many times I have said to a student, you've heard the words on the breath or support. Can you verbalize to me what that means? Half the time they can't verbalize it. So it's very important that in my studio, at the end of each lesson, I say, what are you going to take away from this lesson? Or if something is good, I'll say, what did you do? What were you thinking? When did you feel it? I also use Luciano Pavarotti's Nessun Dorma as the definitive example for me of someone's breath, because this is interesting. I use him and I use Leontine Price because they breathe the same way, in through the nose and the mouth. However, Leontine's soft palate is up, so her placement is a little bit further back. Luciano's, Pavarotti's placement is much brighter. And for musical
Can you
theater,
tell us again? I don't mind to, I don't intend to interrupt you, but
no,
this is
fine.
so important. This is all so important. Celeste está diciendo que, ¿verdad? Contándonos acerca de diferencias fascinantes para mí. Abby, yo no sé si tú estás como yo, pero escuchar a alguien como Celeste haciendo estas afirmaciones con tanta contundencia, para mí es una bendición tenerla para escucharla de ese modo. Así que estaba hablando, ¿verdad? De que las cosas, los cantantes de teatro musical deben conocer de música clásica, ¿verdad? Del bel canto. Pero el approach es diferente, el acercamiento es diferente porque el estilo es diferente. Ya dijo algo bien interesante, one voice, many colors, una voz con muchos colores, ¿verdad? Así que many choices, muchas alternativas. Así que el saber uno dirigirse, ¿verdad? En esa dirección es lo que ella está apuntando y lo que hace con sus estudiantes, ¿verdad? Traer conocer, ¿verdad? La belleza y la integridad del canto clásico. Y tener acceso al recurso que nos da la técnica clásica. Así que entender cómo usarla de manera saludable, ¿verdad? Ese registro agudo, ella nos habla de que it's the same, es lo mismo para ambos estilos, ¿verdad? Cambia la articulación, está hablándonos de la respiración y nos dijo algo bien interesante, usar conocer la fisiología, ¿verdad? De la voz, porque nuestro instrumento es el cuerpo, pero empezó a establecer algo muy interesante entre Pavarotti y entre Leontyne Price. Luciano Pavarotti es un cantante de ópera que todo el mundo conoce y Leontyne Price también es una cantante, ¿verdad? Muy, muy conocida en el mundo de la ópera. Abby, ¿te parece interesante el asunto de la respiración que ella integra, ¿verdad? De ambos cantantes. Háblanos de eso.
Sí, me gusta mucho ese approach porque simplemente el tú usar las técnicas de otros cantantes, inclusive de otros cuerpos, y aplicarlas a tu cuerpo, me parece una sugerencia genial. Y ella también habló sobre lo que ella aprendió de todos sus maestros, que de cada maestro hubo maestros que aprendió qué hacer y otros maestros que aprendió qué no hacer. Me parece interesante que ella todas las experiencias, lo que ha hecho hasta ahora, las ha tomado. Las ha tomado y las ha integrado en vez de decir esto no lo voy a usar, lo está usando para su beneficio y eso es lo que tenemos que hacer todos. I think you can keep talking about technique and different the different.
It's
hard to switch.
I don't know. I don't know if you are what Abby's saying is so important that you took so many things from different teachers that you had and you put everything together. It's not that you throw to the garbage some things. It's just that you can use it in another ways and have another vision in order to put it together for the music you would like to do, the style you would like to do. So that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, I do believe that everything happens is for a reason. And every part of my career, I was never famous. But I did a little of everything. And it led me, and I believe God's plan was that I was to teach. Yes. I think the basis for all good singing is bel canto, bella cantare. It's beautiful singing. And that is the basis. We ride on the breath, we sing on vowels. But there are tweaks that we must make in order to celebrate the contemporary music.
Good.
So what was your next question?
I do want to ask you because I'm still very curious about your journey when you showed us that picture of your vocal folds and you were talking about how at that time there was no way of fixing that, surgically, but how did you arrive to the point?
Abby le está preguntando a Celeste que ella está curiosa por la ilustración de las cuerdas vocales y yo también, para que ella nos diga cómo ella pudo retomar su voz después de esa lesión que tuvo en su cuerda vocal.
Yeah, so tell us.
Okay, so here's the other thing. I mean, this is what they looked like, and it was horrible. Because, and this is another lesson for any singer, you get on a stage and we're all needy and we all want to be loved. So we give way too much. So I didn't know how to pull back. I did not know how to mark because I wasn't taught how to mix or belt at Manhattan School. So when I'd get out on stage and people were like, yay, isn't she fabulous? I would give more. And then the next morning, who suffered? I suffered. So I can hear when they walk up my stairs and say hello, or they're on my screen and they say, what's going on? I shut up for 3 months, did not talk at all. That's what they then, and this is I show as an example of what they then look like, and also the trachea. So that I show videos of the parts of the body and how the body works when you're singing. Okay, so that's what they look like. I went to find a teacher, I found a guy by the name of Iris Sif. He is the voice of Saturday at the Met. In fact, Eduardo knows him, where he did the radio announcing. He was a male soprano. And he ran La Grande Scena Opera. And they would do all the operas in costume, men in the correct keys. It was bizarre, but fabulous.
Ella está diciendo que conoció a un profesor que era un soprano varón y que hacía las arias de ópera de mujeres sopranos en el tono original de las mujeres, de las sopranos. That's amazing.
It was amazing. And he taught me, he helped me rehabilitate my voice. Also, I do advocate, there's a Dr. Michael Pittman here in New York at Columbia Presbyterian. He has, and Lin-Manuel is an advocate of his, a rehabilitation program for the damaged voice. There is so much vocal damage. The composers have gone crazy. 8 shows, at the Met, what do they sing? 2 shows a week, and then they have a week off for 2 weeks. This is 8 shows a week. And the composers are asking of sopranos to belt and mix E's, F's. It's crazy. Now, one of the things that I think is very interesting, and you both as voice teachers will I think agree with me. You hear a lot of nasal singing.
Yes. Especially at Broadway.
Especially at what, honey?
At Broadway.
Yes. Now, there are so many beautiful spaces inside the mouth to create sound. Why are they singing through their nose? And this is another thing about college programs. And I'm sorry to be so negative about this, but most of the teachers, not all, there are some fabulous teachers out there, but most of them have to teach mix and belt. They've never done it themselves. And the way to keep a voice safe is to say, bring it as far forward as possible, forward as possible. Well, I am so glad that I lost my voice and had to rehabilitate it, because I learned so much about the hard way. Exactly. So there are ways. I mean, I have kids that have graduated from some we call it the Trinity, some of those really big colleges, and they come to me and they're squeezing those notes through their nose because of the lack of knowledge of the teacher to create the colors. It's just so tedious. I have a woman we are working tediously to work through the passaggio because her voice teacher worked her upper register. That part of the muscle is so strong. I do work lower register. I call it extension of speech register. I do not use the term chest voice. I have asked a million singers, can you define chest voice? And they look at me with I know we have resonating chambers in our chest. I know that. But our voice isn't in our chest. And when they say, don't bring chest up, I say, what do you think that means? And they look at me like a deer in headlights. And some of these are college graduates. It means don't bring weight up. You want to keep, I was on the board of directors for the Bel Canto Institute for many years. And one of the things Jane Clevitter, who was a prompter at the Met, said over and over again, don't weight your voice. It will age your voice. Well, it's the same thing with musical theater. There's a through line to so many of the concepts. They're very similar. But I digressed. I don't even know what the question was, ladies. Bring me back.
I'm going to take advantage of this because I would like our Spanish people to know what you're saying.
It's very valuable.
Yes. Celeste estuvo 3 meses en silencio para rehabilitarse y buscó ayuda de un profesor. que la ayudó de varios espacios, ¿verdad? De centros de rehabilitación y de este maestro del que les hablé, que era soprano. Y está explicando algo que es bien interesante, ¿verdad? Y que después luego podemos abundar mucho más en este espacio, pero sí, está explicando sobre que el asunto del sonido nasal, que a veces se utiliza para proteger la voz y para hallar una mezcla, como un shortcut, para mezclar el sonido en el espacio del teatro musical, que es muy común escuchar voces nasales. Cuando usted escucha una voz muy nasal en ese espacio, es porque las personas están tratando de hallar eso, lo que llaman la mezcla del sonido, ¿verdad? Y tratar de hacer lo que se llama belting, que es cantar con la voz de pecho y mezclar hacia arriba. Y nos está dando un dato bien interesante acerca de algo muy sencillo. No peses tu voz, porque la vas a hacer envejecer antes de tiempo y va a impedir que tengas la flexibilidad que debes tener para alcanzar ese registro de arriba. Me parece la más de interesante, excelente, excelente, porque hace una diferencia, yo te diría, en todos los estilos que uno quiera cantar, pero especialmente en el teatro musical, porque es trascendental en ese espacio aprender a mezclar y utilizar la voz de pecho, ¿verdad? Para ese
Que ella
estilo
de hecho
musical.
dice que ella no usa el concepto de voz de pecho,
Sí,
que le gusta
exactamente.
utilizar el concepto de voz hablada, que
De
la
hablar.
voz hablada y que de ahí es que entonces ella parte para construir el resto del registro. También habló del pasaggio y de
Ujú,
cómo una estudiante le llegó cantando bien nasal el pasaggio, porque es una
ujú,
manera, es una de las estrategias que muchas personas utilizan, como dice Eileen, para
ujú.
borrar el pasaggio, pero eso trae
Sí,
unas tensiones musculares que entonces
sí,
ella dice que es bien difícil lidiar y que ella entiende que por eso es que es importante que los estudiantes entiendan pedagogía vocal, porque los
sí.
ayuda a ellos realmente entender qué es lo que hacen con su voz, lo que yo estoy 100% de acuerdo.
Yes, yo
Ujú.
también. I'm so glad we were
We
talking
are
about
both
this.
talking. We're like, yes, yes, keep talking, please.
Well, you know, as you're talking, and it's so mesmerizing, so it's so because it's so beautiful, I'm thinking of more and more things. You know, again, there are so many wonderful teachers, there are so many wonderful young people, but we're
Mhm.
in an instant society. And in order to
Mhm.
really become an artist,
Mhm.
it is
Mhm.
a long and beautiful process. And sometimes I wonder, why did God give so many people talent and there's so little work? You know, there's picky and mean, and there's picky and loving, you know,
Mhm.
and as a teacher, loving, supportive, celebratory, but
Yes,
tough. I used to be a belter, you know, that was what they wanted. And that's what I think hurt my voice. So, one thing that's very important in this world is your presentation when you get in the room, knowing who you are. There is no business like show business. It is the greatest business in the world.
I
It
love
is
your
not
passion.
it is not easy, but it is great. And if you have the sensibility and the wherewithal and the constitution to live an actor's life, you could do this forever.